Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help prospective law students save $300,000 on law school. To receive 3 money saving strategies today, visit legallearningcenter.com/money. Now, today's guest is Bianca. Bianca had a pretty rough experience during her 1L year that's important for you to hear. Most 1L students have some type of horror story to share, but Bianca's was a bit worse than most. So with that, let's check in with Bianca. All right, today we are joined by Bianca, who's going to share her legal journey with us. Thanks for joining us, Bianca.
Of course. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'm like nervous and excited all at the same time.
Bianca had a very dramatic Instagram post that really called to me. So I had to have her on for you guys so that you can hear her story and just kind of how just trudging along, doing what works for you is okay. You don't have to meet everyone's approval. You don't have to listen to outside factors. Just take care of you. So, okay, Bianca, tell us a little bit about your background. Do you come from a family of lawyers? Are you a first gen? What's your situation?
Oh no, I was so jealous of all my fellow colleagues who came from generational attorneys. They knew exactly what to do. I felt so outside the loop. So my background is I come from a single mom. I was raised on the west side of San Antonio, so a predominantly poor neighborhood. But she worked her way up and is now like a COO of an international law firm. So
Oh my gosh.
she set the pace for me. She did not let me give up on myself and always reminded me that like if she could go back to undergrad 15 years later with a 6-year-old child and working as a full-time parent, that I could do anything. So unfortunately, I did not have any excuse to just be lazy. She would not take that. And then also, her parents were migrant farm workers. So they had a fifth and a third grade level education. To them, education was everything. And they had 13 kids and they pushed all of them to at least finish high school.
Oh my
So
God.
out of those 13, my mom and my uncle are the only two with undergrad degrees.
So when did you start law school?
I started law school in 2018. So I graduated undergrad 2017, took a year off, and I worked with the Rape Crisis Center. So I was a crisis intervention specialist. I loved that work. That was my dream, to like do something I was so passionate about before law school. And to me, that was helping other survivors of sexual assault. So I got to work in the field that I wanted to go into,
Yeah,
which then just like propelled me into law school because I was like, okay, well, these people need a lot of help in the legal aspect because no one's advocating for them. So I'm going to put that burden on my shoulders and go into law school and burn it all down and be that champion.
yeah, I'm a big proponent of gap years, and even just one, it just makes a big difference in your perspective. And that's so great that you were able to do something like that. That is fantastic.
I have no idea how people go right into law school. I feel like I would have burned out. I know a lot of friends who did that,
Yeah,
but personally, I would have absolutely burnt out. I would not have done well at all.
I agree. I think your brain needs a mental break. I think you need to learn a different set of skills as well. And there's so many skills that you learn just being low man on the totem pole. So what some of your potential clients might be like in the future when they're low man on the totem pole, working in a different industry. Just you get so many different perspectives that you learn, and then again you get that break, you get free time when you go home from work. Most of the time those types of jobs that you have right after college let you go home from work, so unlike law. So
Yeah,
yeah.
very much
So,
unlike law.
yeah. Were you a full-time student?
Yes, yes, I was a full-time student.
Okay. So, how did you feel the first few weeks went for you?
The first few weeks, oh my God, I think it's like the repression of the 3 years. Like, how did that go? No, I mean, I was very fortunate to meet friends easily. I was At my law school, they sectioned you out. So it was like section A, B, and C. So I was in section C. Shout out if anyone's listening.
Mhm.
We were like the hippies of the law group. So all of us wanted to do public interest or like government, and we were like the very nice bunch that other law students could come to for help, and like we weren't like the other sections who would hide books that everyone needed for an assignment.
I hate that. Yes.
Yeah. But no, my first few weeks, I think it was a lot of reading and tears and what did I get myself into? Because none of this makes sense. I'm having a dictionary opened up on Google, just like, okay, now what does that word exactly mean?
Yeah, it's really overwhelming. You learn a lot in a very short period of time, and there's no way to describe just how much you learn. I mean, compared to undergrad or anything else that you do
Yeah.
up until that point.
With law school, unlike undergrad, or I mean, could be depending on the subject, but it's like you have to understand this concept to understand the next concept that comes after it because they're all interrelated at the end of the day. And
Yes.
so that was so hard for me to be like, okay, but I don't understand this subject. And then being so nervous to even go talk to a law professor because you're like, oh, they're so intimidating. Though I will say I do have a story from my first day of law school that I will never forget and that I do tell everyone if
Oh
you
my
don't
gosh.
mind me
Okay.
telling.
Do share.
Okay, so I have a professor named Professor Teeter. He wouldn't mind me using his name. He's the sweetest little man that there is. But he is my torts professor. And it was first day, first class ever of law school. I'm like sitting down in the front row, like ready to start my day. And this man comes in and he's just yelling, and all of us are terrified because we're like, what just happened? And he gets a large bottle of hand sanitizer, and he puts it on the floor and he kicks it across the room. And he's like, and that was an assault because they didn't see it coming. And all of us are like, this is law school.
Oh my gosh. Sounds so weird.
I know it's so weird, but honestly, that professor he was my biggest champion throughout law school. He was so vulnerable with us, and he was also first generation college, first generation law student, or now attorney. He went to Harvard, was like graduated top in his class in law school, and was just like so humble about it because he was like, I shouldn't have been where I was. Like, I was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. Like, I went through all these very traumatic tragedies in life. He's like, so if I can do it and stand up here and be your law professor, like, law school isn't the worst thing that you've ever endured through your life. He's like, and you need to hold on to that. Do not let law school become bigger than you are.
Oh, wow.
So he was the best part of law school.
That's so great that they had him teaching a 1L subject so that you guys could have that exposure right away. Yeah. Now, did you take any 0L courses to prepare?
I did not. I think I got that book like one L of a ride, and that's all I did to prepare because I was like, I don't know what I'm going into, but I did not take any 0L classes.
Okay, so you went in blind, which a lot of us do.
I'm in blind.
Yes, I didn't know there were 0L courses before I went to law school. So I mean, I did a little reading, but yeah. Okay, and then did you take advantage of office hours of your professors?
I did not, and that is like I think that was like a very much I did not throughout my 3 years, and I should have. I think the only professor I felt comfortable talking to was my first year professor, my torts professor, because he was, I don't know, I felt like he was just the most authentic professor that I had had, that I wasn't scared to talk to. And he was also the professor that I went to whenever I would have really bad days and just be like, I don't think I belong here. I don't think I fit in. Like, what am I doing? And he's written me 2 letters of recommendations that I'm just like in puddle of tears over because he's like, she's gonna be the best attorney, best advocate I know. And I'm like, oh my God, he thinks so highly of me.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, no, they are scary. And especially you're going to office hours usually because you don't know something, you don't understand, and so it's hard to admit in this competitive environment that you don't know or understand something. So I'm with you. I wish I had taken better advantage of them. I never went to any. So yeah,
Mm.
you know,
No,
it's
and I'm definitely the stubborn, hard-headed person who's like, I will die on my cross of figuring this out myself.
yeah,
I will YouTube it. I will do whatever I need to do, but going into office hours terrifies me.
yeah, I'm with you on that one too. Okay, well, I know you had a negative experience with a professor in your 1L year as well. So why don't you tell us about that one?
Yes. So, oh God. Okay. So, for those of y'all who have been to law school before, I know you definitely understand this. In civil procedure, there is something called the Erie Doctrine, which none of us understand, or maybe some of us, but I did not understand it. And it's one of like the notoriously hard civil procedure cases. And this professor, basically, if you did bad on a cold call, she needed to see your notes because she needed to know what you did to prepare for her class, or else, and if your notes weren't up to standard, she was going to count you absent. And at my law school, we could only have 3 absences per class without being deducted our grade or being like failing that class. So it was like a very like, you're going to count me absent even though I was here thing.
Yeah, how
So I got
scary.
called for the Erie Doctrine. And the night before, I had spent 5 hours reading through that darn case, did not understand a word of what it was. I still think I don't understand the concept fully. Um, but I just did absolutely horrible on that cold call. I could not tell her what the procedural posture meant. I could not tell her what the holding was. I could not tell her anything because I genuinely did not understand the case itself. And I mean, I guess maybe that's an example of when I should have gone to office hours to be like, hey, I really don't understand what's going on here. But she was also a very scary law professor. She was terrifying to everyone. Um, so I did really bad, and our civil procedure class was 2 hours. So we had a 10-minute break in between. So I did really bad, flustered on the whole cold call. And I guess for like at least my first year, I was very scared of public speaking. And I think that also attributes to being first gen and like not really believing in your own voice.
Yeah.
So I was scared, I was fumbling over my words. It was the biggest train wreck that you could imagine. I want to say like Legally Blonde whenever the that professor just grilled her. It was like that and no idea what was going on up
Yeah.
in here. Um So during our break, I was like, okay, you know what? I do not want to stay after class to show this lady my notes. Let me just get it done during my break. So I went up to her and I was like, look, I read. I promise you I read. I just don't understand any of this. I was like, these are my notes. Like I've looked on Lexis to like try and find more background info to like kind of break down the holdings, things like that. And I was like, honestly, I just don't understand it that well. And then she was like looking over my notes, looking through my book, seeing all the highlights and little notes that I had made. And she just turned to me with like a stone cold look and said, well, Miss Ibarra, if this is how your notes look, you can expect not to be here next semester. And cue the tears because I am an angry crier. So I was
Ugh.
like, oh, okay. And I got my book and I got my laptop and I put them down where I was sitting. And unfortunately, I did sit at like the front of the class for that class too. So I put
Ugh.
it down, went to the bathroom, cried during the break, during the remainder of the break. I think I still had like 5 to 7 minutes. So just absolutely puddle of tears, wiped my face, like tried to calm it down because I get very red whenever I cry. So like I had red all over my face.
Ugh.
And like I just sat down with my head down for the next hour of this class. And then I left and I cried some more in my car and I got bangs. That's how traumatic it was for me. I
Oh my,
got bangs afterwards.
oh my gosh. Oh my, okay. So that's, first of all, I think a very inappropriate thing for someone who's supposed to be helping you learn to say.
Yeah.
Um, I can't even imagine having a professor. I think we all have our horror stories of professors that's either seem mean or are mean, but to actually directly say that to you, it's just unimaginable. I can't even imagine, yeah, what I would do myself. So what did you do
Mhm.
after that?
Honestly, I cried to one of my mentors who is an attorney at where my mom works. So she was the one who helped me with all my law school applications. And I was just like, Natalie, I don't think I'm cut out for this. Like, I don't think I'm meant to be here. Like, I'm not smart enough for this. Like, everyone's smarter than me. Cause I mean, you hear your other classmates do really, really well on cold calls.
Yeah.
And like for someone who was, because now I got over that, I was on the ADR team, so I had to speak in public all the time. But
Yeah.
who was like really scared to speak in public and like already intimidated. It was so hard for me, and I just cried. Like luckily that class, I think that happened like on a Thursday, so I didn't have to see her again for like the next Tuesday. Um so I was just like really, really sad about it. And luckily I had my mentor to be like, well, you know, honey, this is law school. Like, I'm sorry, but you will continue to have these experiences. She's like, but remember why you went there in the first place. Remember all the survivors that you helped that made you, I don't know, because I never promised anyone anything. I will say that. But I will say I was fueled with rage to be like, I have to go to law school. I have to do this because there are too many cases getting swept under the rug. And I want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And so she constantly reminded me that she's like, you were supposed to be the solution, remember? If not you, who else? And I got up the next day, freaking Quimby'd, paid for Quimby to try and figure it out. And I kept going. And at the end of my first semester, I made top 15%.
I think that's such a good example of how one circumstance doesn't mean that's who you are. Whether it's one mistake or just one misunderstanding or one fumble. I mean, and I wouldn't even call that a fumble. That happens. It happens all the time. I mean, there was an assignment I remember from torts class that I didn't understand. And when I got to class, it turned out nobody else understood it either. And the torts professor called on someone and they said, I didn't really understand this. And she got kind of angry. So she called on somebody else and they said the same thing. And she called on like 3 or 4 people and they all said the same thing. We just really didn't understand this assignment or this case or whatever. And then she turned to us and instead of like just explaining the situation, she said, if you guys don't do the work, and she went on some kind of rant. And it was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
there's 4 people that just told you they didn't get it. And believe me, those of us who you didn't call on didn't get it either. Like, we've been doing all the assignments this whole semester. Why would you think today is the day we didn't do the work? It's very frustrating. We all have those circumstances. And yeah, it's really important to remember one situation, one thing where you didn't understand, you're not alone and it
Yeah.
doesn't define you. You're a bigger
No,
person than that one thing.
definitely. And I remember my classmates like afterwards being like, honestly, everyone in there was holding their fingers that they did not get called on for that case because no one understood it. They're just like, literally, everyone was sitting there today being like, God, please do not call on me for this. Like, please, God, whoever, do not let this be my day.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so, I mean, and I think what it also showed me um, at the end of that first semester being that high ranking was a lot of my classmates who did really, really great on cold calls didn't perform that well on the test. So just because someone does great on cold calls does not mean that they're smarter than you or that they know more than you. sometimes people are just really good at bullshitting. And I think that's like what I learned the hard way because I'm like, oh, you didn't understand that case at all? And they're like, no. I'm like, how do I have that confidence? I want that. Like, I
Yeah.
was over here believing everything that was coming out of your mouth.
Yes, it's so true. We all have different skill sets. Some of us cannot write an essay to save our lives. It's very difficult. And some of us cannot public speak. And law school is there to teach you a little bit of all of that. So yeah, you will develop those skills. That's what it's there for. So okay, so you said top 15%. And so what did you end up doing? Tell me about your extracurricular activities and other things that you did throughout the rest of your law school experience.
So I was on a journal in law school. Also, to anyone who's in law school, being on a journal does not mean that you're better than anyone else or doesn't mean you're more prestigious. It's just there was a journal for race and social justice that I really wanted to be a part of. So like if you ever get denied for being on journal, like do not let that be your end all be all. You do not need to be on journal to have a successful career. It does not make you a better attorney. It does not make you a better writer. Those things come with putting in the work and the effort.
And you said
I just
ADR, just to make sure people
yeah.
understand what that is. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it stands for?
Yeah, it's the alternative dispute resolution team. So a lot of negotiations, mediation, arbitration, client counseling. My coach was the absolute best. So she had a full-time job up in Austin and is on the Hill working for human trafficking and sexual assault survivors. She's an all-around badass. And then she would spend her Saturdays with us, driving all the way down here, spending her full Saturday just to
Wow.
teach us these vital skills. And honestly, I feel like that's the only reason I'm semi prepared to be an attorney because she really did teach us how to communicate effectively, which is something that you really, really need as a lawyer. And I saw it a lot whenever I was a student attorney for my criminal clinic, so I did defense work, and I saw that a lot with some of my other peers who were maybe on like mock trial team or didn't have any experience before, but they didn't know how to effectively communicate with their client, and they were really horrible at client counseling. And I think I lucked out not only being on the alternative dispute resolution team, but I also had a job at a nonprofit. And so my work was like doing a lot of intakes for different fields of law. So like anywhere from like evictions to divorces to domestic violence. I did a range of civil law and like employment law. So it's like I had to be really good at spotting whenever your client's telling you a story. They don't know what the legal issue is there. They just know that they have a problem. And it's your job as an attorney to figure out, okay, like what problem do you have and what facts do I need to solve your problem?
Yeah.
So I think doing that for like a whole year, just talking to everyone from different races, different income levels, different law issues really helped me be able to like, okay, like you're talking about this, so it's probably going to be more of a property issue. And I feel like I don't know, maybe I just have the personality to talk to people. Some people I go to law school with just are not great at social interaction.
Yeah,
I'll
there
say
definitely
that.
there's a reason there's different types of law, you know? It's some people need to work with corporations or whatever, and some people really are good with, let me hold your hand and figure out what you need. And are also good at manipulating that situation where it's like, okay, we're not spending 10 hours discussing what you need, but let's get the facts so that I can get on with helping you. And so yeah, that's a great skill to have. And yeah, not one that everybody has. And yeah, again, like you said, there are different people that go into law school. Everyone has different skill sets, and we need all the people. We need, we
Yeah.
need people like you. We need people that are not you, to do all the different representations that are out there. And yeah, going back to that professor and how overwhelming that must have been to hear something so harsh. It's just, I don't know if she came from a perspective of we should only have people who are on it 24/7, like they just know everything, or if she was trying to play some kind of devil's advocate kind of thing where it's like, if I crumple you down, you're either going to rise above or crumple and get out of the game.
Yeah,
But that's a risky tactic. You know, I mean,
I think so too. And I know I'm not the first law student to do this to you. She told one of my really good friends, you have an 80% of never passing the bar and never becoming an attorney. Like
wow.
whenever she was like, she went to her for advice and like that's what she came out with. So she's kind of notorious for doing things like that, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I will say my whole I'm like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Selena, about Selena Quintanilla,
Yeah.
played by J-Lo, that one. So I did have my we don't need the dress moment this past year. She had to give me an award because I won a Woman in Law Leadership Award this year. And she had to be there to see me.
Oh my gosh.
I was just like, this is my moment where you told me I was going to fail out my first semester. Look at me now. I'm about to graduate, and you have to give me an award.
Oh my God. That's great. How redeeming. It's like in your face.
It was a very redeeming. I texted my husband. I was like, ha ha ha. Guess what?
That's so great because, you know, we can move on and we can have our rewards and things like that. But again, did that person see me get the reward? Did they see me overcome? And maybe not. So she had to face it. She had to see. Now, how much she remembered of what she told you is a whole nother thing, but because apparently she just dishes it out. But that is, yeah, that's awesome. And so, okay, so you just graduated this year, right?
Yes, I graduate on Saturday, but I'm officially done with law school forever.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And so now it's just bar study time, right?
Yeah, a lot of bar study time, which, oh my God, I think being in a pandemic and staying home for a whole year has made that very, very hard for me.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, I'm studying from home, but my couch is right there. So instead of lunch, I could take a nap.
Do not do that. I had a friend do that. I would call her to ask her a question and she'd be taking a nap. I'm like, what are you doing? Yes. And she did not pass. So don't do that.
Don't take a nap. Got it.
I want to make sure if you have any overall advice for students who are about to enter law school, because I know they are probably terrified. I mean, they've probably heard horror stories themselves. And then, yeah, you've got your lovely kicking the bucket thing on the first day. And then, like, which is just so freakish. I mean, your first day, you're already terrified and you're like, what's going on in here? And then having that lovely lady give you a lovely review of your situation. Uh, is there anything you can do to any advice for them that would help them prepare or feel calmer or more like they belong?
Be authentic to yourself. You are going to be surrounded by other people who you may think are a lot smarter than you, but promise, I promise, they will never bring to the table what you can. So be 100% authentic to the person you are. I like to say I am a very non-traditional law student. I have a full sleeve of tattoos. I was very rebellious. I was an editor of a law journal, but I was still a very rebellious editor. I never let that fierceness of the person I am, or the little girl that came from the hood, as I like to say, I never let her go. And because I never let her go, I was able to find very genuine friends and very supportive people who understood where I came from and wanted to see me rise and just do nothing but thrive. And the people that you meet in law school that do become your friends, they are your lifers. You will not let them go. they they are the people who you can talk to on your worst days, who probably don't understand the same cases as you, who will be your bestest friends. But
Yes.
you can only find them if you're being 100% who you are.
And it's so true because you already feel like you have this imposter syndrome being there. and trying to do your best. And if you are also this imposter in your personality and with the people you meet, you're going to sink yourself. You're going to doom yourself. Even if you succeed, you're still dooming yourself internally in your, soul. So that is just the best advice. I love that. Bianca, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your bar prep to give everyone your story and your advice. It is so appreciated and I think so needed by these law students and pre-law students.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really glad I could be here, but if you want to go to law school, you got it. That's all it takes. You want it, you got it, like Ariana Grande says. But definitely remember why you started. Keep that, hold on to it. I have it plastered in front of me. Like I started this journey because I'm going to do well on bar prep, because I'm going to pass the bar, because I never let that waver, because you are there for a reason.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you have to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1% to 2% lower interest rates than the federal government, and with no origination fees and cash back as well. Visit advisor.legallearningcenter.com/Juno for more information. My top takeaways from this chat with Bianca. 1, she thought she was not smart enough and ended up in the top 15% of her class. So if you feel this way, just know you're not alone and it doesn't mean anything. Number 2, you never know how you're going to stack up against the other students. Some are great with homework, reading, repeating, discussing, but cannot convey that on an essay exam. So if you're having trouble with public speaking, don't worry, that's not an indicator of how you're going to do on the tests, and you will develop that skill. Number 3, be authentic. No one else can bring to the table what you do. That's it for this episode. All the tips and so forth will be in the show notes. A full transcript will be available at legallearningcenter.com/Bianca. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something today, please like, share, comment, leave a review so that this show is more visible and can help those who may need it. Thanks.